Okay, wanted to talk about the slide function in Wings 3D today. So to do that, I got a sort of a special made sphere on the screen here, which I think will show the attributes of the slide function a little bit better. So let's get started by selecting a loop to be slid. And the first thing we can do is select this loop. So I can either do that by selecting an edge and then touching the L key, which will then select the entire loop, or spacebar to deselect that. What I actually have pre-selection highlighting turned on, such that when I hover over anything and make it a temporary highlight, that's as much as clicking on it. So I could just hover over this and touch the L key and it would do the same thing. Maybe a small thing, but it does save on some clicks and make some things a little bit faster. For those of you who don't know, it's actually in your Preferences menu under Edit Preferences on the Advanced tab, and then it's right here, Extend Selection via Hotkey. And so what this does is basically allows a temporary highlight to be used as a selection for a hotkey, which is just what we did here. So with that loop selected, I'll zoom in a little bit here and we'll get in a little closer. And so now I can actually invoke the edge slide. And as always with all the commands, whenever you're not sure what's happening or whatever, always look down in the bottom left-hand corner to the information line. The information line is your friend, it is your tutor, it is your best ally when using Wings 3D because it helps you with information all the time, whether mousing over commands or even when you have invoked a command, like in this case. When I click on slide, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner it tells me what will happen now that the slide command has been invoked. Left mouse click will accept, right will cancel. I can click tab, I can touch the tab key to do a direct numerical entry if I know the exact amount I want something to occur at. I can use shift tab to switch constraint sets. And in the bottom right hand corner you'll actually see the three options that we want to talk about today. These are the three options that come with the slide function. And the number 1 key toggles the relative and absolute. Number 2 key toggles freeze and thaw direction, and the number 3 key toggles continue past or stop at the bordering edges. And so those are the things we're going to figure out today. So relative and absolute, what are the differences between those two? Well, there is a couple of good differences between those two. And the first one is looking up at your upper left hand corner of the screen, where you see for any command it tells you how far you have moved or transformed in that command. With things set to the absolute as they currently are, it registers both from 0, both in the positive and negative direction. It will register an exact absolute wings amount that the transform is taking place. So it tells you in absolute numbers how far you have moved, positive or negative, in your slide. If on the other hand I go to relative, it changes to percentages. So from 0, it tells me that I have moved either in a positive percentage or a negative percentage from 0 to 100%. So that is one difference. And a couple of reasons why those are important is, number 1, because for any one of these you can use tab to directly enter a number. So if I want to slide upwards exactly 40%, then I can just hit the tab key, type in 40, and it will go to exactly plus 40%. Very cool. On the other hand, the second thing, not only with numerical entry, but with the constraint sets, you can use both your Shift, Control, and Alt keys to use constraints for edge slide much as you can for any other transform in Wings. So by holding down, I think my Control key is set to tenths. Oh, actually, I'm going to go to absolute because that makes it a little bit easier. My Control key is set to tenths, so I can move 1/10 at a time with my constraints there. My Alt key is set to hundreds, such a little bit easier. And so the constraints with absolute are again your numbers. You're based on the constraints you have set for movement for numbers. If it's set to absolute, then you'll go by percentages, and in this case Control is 0 to 100%. My Shift is in 10% increments, and my Alt actually doesn't have anything on it. So that's another important difference. Your constraints will also change if you choose to move them, depending on whether you're on absolute or relative. Okay, the second big difference between relative and absolute is the shape that your sliding loop assumes as it slides closer to one bordering loop or the other. In absolute, your sliding loop will tend to maintain its original shape, regardless of the shape of the bordering loop it's moving against. In this case, the upper loop is the same shape anyway, they're both flat. But in the case of the bottom one, even though it's moving up against an oddly shaped loop, it maintains its original shape because it's set in absolute. If I toggle this to relative, now when I go up, obviously because it had at its neutral point, its original shape was the same as the upper loop, so it doesn't change much. But watch what happens when I get closer to the bottom one. Now it really starts changing, morphing, if you will, from its original flat shape into the complete shape of the bottom loop, that odd-shaped loop, at 100%. So it goes from original shape at 0 to 100% the shape of the other loop at 100%. This is actually a handy kind of thing because it allows you to put in, relatively easily put in some control loops next to, butting up against oddly shaped loops by doing this. Because what you can do to create a control loop against this bottom loop very quickly and easily is you select first an edge slide in relative, go to 100% so that it assumes the shape of that border loop. You click to confirm, and now you actually invoke a second slide while that loop is still selected. You then go to absolute so that it maintains its shape and slide off just a little bit. And that gives you a really great support loop because it maintains the shape of that oddly shaped loop. The first slide made it assume its shape, and the second slide just pulls it off a little bit so you get that nice rounded but sharp edge, but it maintains a nice tight integration with that oddly shaped loop. So that's kind of a trick for putting in some control loops on oddly shaped border loops with the edge slide command. Okay, so the second thing, let's undo those and come back to our original position here. The second thing is the freeze and thaw. So what are freeze and thaw all about? Well, freeze and thaw are all about what happens on the edges that control your direction of your slide. And those are the vertical edges on either side. So and all of these vertical edges, the edges that your sliding loop slides along, are the ones that determine which direction it's sliding against. It determine its slide direction, essentially. So, with it on thaw as it is now, basically those vertical edges simply give and allow wherever you slide to form a smooth as possible shape between the boundary loops and your edge loop that's being slid. If we put it on freeze, it freezes one of those directions so that it can continue sliding in the direction of that direction. So if I want, so in this case, I'm going to freeze it and freeze those upper edges, those upper verticals, so that they stay frozen even when I slide all the way down. Okay, so you can pick one or the other to freeze, and then now I'll toggle back to thaw, and so now they both will give again. And so if I were to go down here and hit freeze, now the bottom ones will be frozen. And so it allows you to do some kind of interesting things with sliding along the direction of some of those bordering vertical edges. It allows you to freeze them so that you can continue sliding in that direction. This can be kind of handy if you want to create some sort of ridge like I already kind of made there, and you want it to continue sliding in this exact direction. You don't want it to actually give and slide down these. That's what the freeze is really handy for. It allows you to freeze those and continue sliding along those. And of course, the way you determine which ones are frozen, it is the edges, the vertical edges that you have slid onto from neutral. So from a neutral position, if I want the upper edges to be frozen, then I need to slide upward just a little bit and then hit freeze, and those upper edges will be frozen. If I want the bottom edges to be frozen, then I need to slide the loop down slightly from neutral to the bottom and then hit freeze, and then the bottom ones will get frozen. So I'll show you what I mean. From neutral, the slide function automatically comes in thaw, so you don't have to worry about it being pre-frozen. If I want the bottom edges to be frozen, I just slide down slightly from neutral, and you can look up in the upper left-hand corner to see which way you have slid. I can slide down just slightly in the negative direction, then touch the 2 key, and the bottom edges will have frozen. If I want, now I can hit thaw again. Now if I want the upper edges to be frozen, then I can slide just to the positive direction of neutral, hit the freeze, hit the number 2 key to freeze, and those will now be frozen. So the edges that are frozen are determined by the neutral position, the starting position of your sliding loop, and what you do from that point on. You slide slightly toward the edges you want to freeze, then you hit freeze, and then you slide in the other direction, and they're now frozen. So hopefully that was clear and helpful. The only other thing that's important to mention about the freeze and thaw is that if you are on 0, and basically you just, here I'll just click off and I'll invoke a fresh slide command. So I click the slide command, but I don't move the mouse at all. So right now the sliding edge is right on the neutral position. If I were to hit freeze here, which ones are going to be frozen? The upper ones or the lower ones? The answer is, it's arbitrary. You don't really know. Basically, you want wings. If you don't give wings any information about which ones to choose, then it's just going to pick one at random, and you might not know. So if you like that kind of geometry roulette, feel free to play. Otherwise, slide slightly toward the direction of the edges that you want frozen, the vertical edges that you want frozen. Click the freeze, and then they will be frozen from that point on until you hit thaw again. Okay, the only other thing we need to talk about is the number 3, which is the continue past or stop at other edges. And that's basically talking about these borders. Right now we have it set to stop at other edges, and so it's not going to go past no matter what I do. If I were to click the 3 key to continue past other edges, then I can actually slide past one and the other without any problems, which creates some weird stuff, as you can see down here. So depending on what you want to do, the number 3 can also be a handy thing as well. So that's about it for the slide command. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it helps somebody. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon.